Cyril Ramaphosa has been re-elected as the ANC president during the party's 55th national conference, with Paul Mashatile elected as his deputy. Gwede Mantashe retained his position as the ANC deputy chair. Fikile Mbalula has been elected as the party's secretary general, a very strategic position in the party, while Nomvula Mokonyane emerged as the party's first secretary general, and Maropene Ramokgopa becoming the second SG. And last but certainly not least, Gwen Ramokgopa was nominated as the party's Treasurer General. Tebogo Khaas is a founder and chair of Public Interest SA, and he joins us to chat about the nominations and, of course, those who emerged victorious. Great to have you. Thanks very much, Tebogo, for your time.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure being with you earlier.
So a lot of changes and flipping that brought the election outcomes after including the additional member of a second deputy SG on the top six. Let's talk about the outcomes. Were you surprised by some of the names, or was this kind of what you were expecting?
Well, quite honestly, just like the World Cup this year, one would be foolish to actually say that one knew how the outcome was going to be like, because certainly it could have gone either way. So whereas the names that came up are names that, in one instance, like the second deputy general, it was a bit of a surprise. I think the biggest change is that of Treasurer General that we shared, Gwen Ramokgopa managed to win. But otherwise, it's I think it's a slate, if I may call it that, it's a slate that seems to be very leaning towards Ramaphosa's campaign, and really not much surprises. The only surprise was Ronald Lamola contesting the deputy president. When it was clear that he wasn't going to, he stood not much of a chance. But in any event, I think for all intents and purposes, it is not a surprising slate. But it could have gone either way. That's what we know. Although the margin of Ramaphosa's win is quite high, I think just under 600, but nobody could really take bets on this one.
Yeah, indeed. So that's the outcome. The president is there. Now we look at the issue of the deputy president, which comes in as Paul Mashatile. We know that Ronald Lamola, Oscar Mabuyane were also the ones on the Ramaphosa slate for the deputy presidency. And then it was basically taken as a final decision to leave Mabuyane as the deputy. When did Paul Mashatile come back into the equation? I mean, was Gauteng the kingmaker in this conference, as Lebogang Maile had insisted that they ditch Ramaphosa because their candidate Mashatile was not on the slate?
Yeah, I think Gauteng overstated their capacity to sway the voting, because clearly the outcome did not reflect their wishes. It is a common cause that they were actually the executives, the provincial executives themselves were rooting for Mkhize, and the branches thought otherwise. They thought this is what the delegates had pronounced, and which is what the PE itself had also pronounced a few months ago, and it doesn't they decided to stick with Ramaphosa. And in actual fact, they were also the biggest losers, I must say. Forget about KZN, but Gauteng also, because if you look at it, they were actually vying for Fikile Mbalula as well, and also on for the TG post. And on the Secretary General, I don't think they really were behind Mbalula, who actually came out the biggest winner also in that regard. So Gauteng itself, I think they have to do a bit of introspection, because certainly if they don't change their posture, it might spell doom for them come 2024.
Yeah. So the top seven working together now, because previously it's been described that the top six before was a very divided top six in its way. But this particular top seven, as we look at the allegiances and where they're coming from, obviously we know that Paul Mashatile was obviously coming from the more Zweli camp, as well as Nomvula Mokonyane. But the rest looks very much so favorable for President Ramaphosa now. Do you think this is going to make a difference? Because many people saying this should now be the moment that the president can be decisive and start making decisions with the majority of the support in his favor in this top seven.
No, absolutely. And maybe just take one step back as I respond to this other question. The only surprise personally was that of Gwede Mantashe. Most people had written him off actually, including myself. I actually thought others like Stan Matabate stood a better chance than him. But there you are. He came back the tiger and made sure that actually pips all the two other contenders for this position. And certainly insofar as the composition of the top seven, it is friendly to Ramaphosa, except for the two names that you mentioned, that is Mashatile and Nomvula Mokonyane, who seem to be part of what you'd call the RET, or leaning more towards the RET grouping, or Zulum Kiza's bloc. That should be, in principle, that should help Ramaphosa, because you'd have in Fikile Mbalula, for instance, 11 administrator who would be able to look after the affairs of the ANC and make sure that as a sweeper for Ramaphosa, he's able to run or drive the organization in Lutuli to make sure that everything runs smooth for Ramaphosa, who would then be able to run government without keeping one foot in Lutuli House or one eye in Lutuli House while the other one is in government. And certainly in Gwede Mantashe himself as chair, he's also got a very big ally. But the question is, will the Zondo reports implementation affect some of those on the top seven list, including Gwede Mantashe himself, as well as Nomvula Mokonyane, who have been against whom understandings were made by Chief Justice Zondo. So Ramaphosa, yes, but he really has to change how he governs, because he needs to be much more bold and decisive in whatever they do. But at the outset, I think they need to send a message, a very strong message out there for the likes of Isma Khashulas and even Jacob Zuma and Nkosazana Zuma, and read them the Riot Act, because that behavior leading to and including now after the conference has left a lot to be desired. And I think some action, unless some action is taken against those errant individuals, including the US Suda, for instance, it might very well that it erodes any power or confidence that Ramaphosa ought to drive out of this election.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just onto your Gwede Mantashe point, quite incredible, actually. As you say, I mean, people thought perhaps he wasn't going to, but I mean, this is his second 5-year term. Add to that the previous 2 5-year terms, which gives him 20 years in the top 6 of the NEC leadership. It's crazy. I mean, it obviously says a lot about him and his presence within the ANC, but I don't want to dwell on that too much. I want to just get your views going forward, because yes, you talk about seeing strong action, seeing the president come in. These were things we were hoping to see within the first term. It didn't happen. Now we're into this second term. Let's see what happens. We're not too sure what's going to happen, particularly that there's a very strong faction unhappy with him within his party because of the whole Phala issue that's hanging over his head, and opposition. I mean, we already heard Julius Malema of the EFF speaking at a rally yesterday in Limpopo, saying they're going to make his time ungovernable. Until they know what is going on with the Phala issue, he won't be able to lead, and he won't be able to have decisive decisions. They won't allow this. Well, in fact, Julius Malema was already tweeting that he had prevailed before the announcement was made, but that's a separate issue. But talk to us about Ramaphosa going forward now with Phala hanging over him.
Look, from my vantage, Phala is nothing to do about much to do about nothing, and in actual fact, I don't see even the investigations by both the public protector as well as SARS and SARB and the Reserve Bank, for instance, coming to any other adverse conclusion on SARS. It might very well be that, if any, it will be some sort of a minor infraction that they may cite. But remember, the fact of the matter is that there is no way to find any serious transgressions on the part of Ramaphosa. As far as I'm concerned, it might very well be that those bodies I just mentioned come back and say, yes, you shouldn't have kept so much dollars. But remember, it's not him personally, it was the company itself, and he wasn't involved in day-to-day running. So the EFF would obviously have found any ruse or any reason to try and make Ramaphosa's life miserable. And in any event, even if there was no Phala-Phala, certainly they would have found something to take issue with. They were dealt a very serious blow because they were hoping that Zweli Mkhize would emerge as the leader of the ANC. In that way, they would have much more sway and influence over the RET faction within the ANC. And now with Ramaphosa emboldened, I would want to believe, it's going to be difficult for the lack of. I mean, I've heard Julius make comments like yesterday that they are going to give Ramaphosa a hard time, as you mentioned also. But over what and how? Because Ramaphosa will govern, and when it comes to voting within Parliament, we're going to see some changes with regards to the lineup of the MPs. But largely, we have seen support. Even within Parliament, ANC members behind Ramaphosa. So it's going to be difficult for the EFF. In any event, the EFF have not given Ramaphosa any pass on anything in any event. So do not think they'll have any other different or more impact than they've had in the past. I think it's just daydreaming on the part of Malema.
Is anything going to change? Is anything going to change with the ANC now? We see new faces in different positions. There is so much, but South Africa is in a very difficult position. Can this ANC do anything to change the trajectory? And does it have a future in 2024?
You know, to the extent that policy positions seem to have been, relegated to the backbench or the back burner at this conference, as far as I'm concerned, we still don't know what the ANC will do differently on energy crisis that we face, for example. We don't know if what is their position insofar as the unbundling of Eskom and what is the pace and what is envisaged in that regard. Those type of pronouncements haven't been made clear because everybody has been focusing more on jockeying for positions or winning election. And certainly in regards to changes, it will depend largely on the NEC or at least the top 7 and support that Ramaphosa could rely on from them to make sure that he implements the type of, or he moves fast or with boldness of sorts, something that has been lacking in the past. So let us hope and pray that Ramaphosa will realize that he must seize the moment. He's got nothing to now fear, because if his concern was that he wanted to protect the second term of his chance of winning the second term, now there's no motivation anymore for him to say, now I cannot die because I'm worried that I might lose the elections next time, because now he can move with pace and make sure that he implements those policies that have been difficult for him or he's facilitated around, including those around Eskom, for example. So it's going to be very interesting. I haven't seen the final list of the additional members of the NEC, but I don't think much will change. If anything, I've seen more names that are coming up that will be much more leaning towards Ramaphosa.
All right, we leave it there. Tebogo, thank you for talking to us. Tebogo Khaas, founder and chair of Public Interest SA, discussing the outcomes of the election of the ANC's 55th National Conference, the top 7 members.